he wants his Attorney General to look into it, despite, as you know, the Supreme Court in America ruling not that long ago that presidents were pretty much had pretty much full immunity for actions taken in office.
It is that time of the evening, time for the Trump dump, where we try to make sense of all the comings and goings from the occupant of the White House. With me is David Chotter, Assistant US Editor of The Times. Hello to you, David.
Hello from Washington, D.C.
How very nice to talk to you. And there's always something to say, isn't there? Every night something happens. So hurrah for that. In the last hours, the United States has signed a trade deal with Japan, which will lower tariffs on some of Japan's exports to the US, from 25% to 15%. That rate is higher, of course, than the 10% levy that exports from Japan to the US face at the moment, although lower than President Trump warned earlier this month. In a post on Truth Social, the president said that Japan would invest $550 billion into the US as part of the agreement, and the country would also open its economy to US exports of cars, trucks, rice and other agricultural products. So how do you think this trade deal compares to the one that the UK struck with the United States, David?
Well, it's not as good a deal as Britain got, but it's more important, I think, to America, because Britain and America are pretty closely intertwined, and Britain had a trade deficit with the US. Japan had a trading surplus and was therefore one of those countries that was really being targeted by Trump, which he claims for taking advantage of America. That's the way he sees it, when a country sells more stuff to America than America exports. And America did want to open up Japanese markets. This is actually going to be regarded, I think, as a win for Trump, because he's got the Japanese to sign up to a 15% tariff. It's much lower than the one he threatened, 25%, of course, but still pretty substantial. And markets seem to be pretty calm in America. There's none of the huge disruptions to the stock markets and the bond markets that we saw on Liberation Day, when the initial enormous number of tariffs were unveiled by Trump. In fact, almost a reversal of it, that bonds are being sold because the rates are coming down, because the markets seem to be content with the way that Trump's policy is going. It's not the only trade deal he's done in the last 24 hours. They've also signed off on Indonesia and the Philippines. And so after the really chaotic unveiling of this tariff program, there's now been a mini procession of deals that have seemed to be calming the worst fears of markets, that it would really disrupt global trade.
But David, you say that the markets feel quite calm about it, but in the people that you know and that you talk to day to day, members of the public, do they think that the tariff idea is a good one, that it seems to be working? Because at the start we heard, didn't we, about how it would affect prices in American shops and how the consumer would suffer. What are they saying to you?
No, it's still an unpopular policy. We actually have an opinion poll coming out next Monday, I can exclusively reveal, which is the 200 days mark of the Trump administration. I can't tell you exactly what the results are yet, because they're still being totted up. But it's an unpopular policy, and it has shaken people's faith, including Republican voters' faith in Trump's handling of the economy. And we're really talking in relative terms here, that the several deals unveiled this week are being regarded in a much more calmer manner than the massive disruption in April when he launched his widespread tariffs. And we may yet have a really bumpy road to come, because if you remember, Trump has extended his final deadline for tariff deals to August the 1st, and he said he was just going to unilaterally let other countries know what their deal was. And so there is nervousness among Trump's own voters that prices will have to rise to pay these tariffs, and that's probably true. But the other thing they were worried about was a crashing stock market because markets had soured had lost their faith in America basically, and in Trump's hand completely in Trump's handling of the economy, and that's American. A lot of American pensions are very closely linked to the stock market, so it was people were worried about two things: prices and pensions. And the pensions have stabilized, that the markets have totally recovered from the drop in April. And so it's not perfect, and there are still nerves about it, but it's a lot better than it was in April.
And when it comes to tariffs and deals, of course, Sir Keir Starmer is going to want to try to get a better deal when it comes to steel exports. No doubt he'll be bending Donald Trump's ear when he comes to Scotland on Friday. Let's move on to Donald Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama, who has broken his silence after he was accused of treason by Donald Trump. The current president says that after he won the 2016 election, his predecessor tried to sabotage him by linking him to Russian election meddling. Well, Obama's office has now released a statement calling the claims outrageous and an attempt at distraction. Donald Trump has got Tulsi Gabbard on his side, who is, of course, the US Director of National Intelligence. Last week, she released a report which accused Barack Obama and his team of a years-long coup against President Trump. Speaking today, she stood by that.
The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence to undermine and usurp the will of the American people in that election and launch what would be a years-long coup against the incoming president of the United States, Donald Trump.
Oh, David, is this a bit of distraction policy, trying to turn the attention away from all that chat about documents related to the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
In my view, it certainly is. And I think the basis for this extraordinary claims from the sitting American president that his predecessor is guilty of treason, and he wants his attorney general to look into it, despite, as you know, the Supreme Court in America ruling not that long ago that presidents were had pretty much full immunity for actions taken in office. But putting that to one side, it's not just on the immunity grounds, it's on the substance of what Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, has been saying. She's been, I think, using a sleight of hand, from what I can see, to build a case against Obama by taking a lot of She's released a lot of early intelligence reports from 2016 looking at Russian influence on the election. And those intelligence reports, several of them said that they could not find any evidence, and they'd had no grounds to believe that Russia had the means and then after the election had been able to change the result of the election. But there she stops. But there's a lot more to it than that. All of these reports are about manipulating the election machinery. A lot of the votes in America are cast on electric machines, which Trump in 2020, as you recall, said some of his claims were that these machines had been fixed by cyber attacks, by to change the actual votes once they'd been cast electronically.
I just chuck in hanging chads as well, David.
Well, yeah, but this is important.
No, right.
It's all about the cyber and electronic element of the machinery, the infrastructure of the election. That's what all these pre-election reports that Tulsi Gabbard is relying on to build her case refer to. No evidence being found that Russia was able to actually influence and change the infrastructure, the machines changed the votes. And then she says, well, then after the election, after Trump had won, Obama and his administration suddenly said, oh, Russia has influenced the election. We're going to have a big inquiry. And of course, this is the inquiry that overwhelmed the Trump administration for the best part of 2.5 years when he was first in power. But that's on the much broader topic of social media influencing and other ways of influencing people's votes, not changing them electronically, mechanically in the infrastructure, but more generally speaking. Well, and lots of evidence was found of that and it's all set out in the Mueller report, which was the big inquiry into it that everyone may have forgotten and hoped it had gone away, but it's still something that keeps President Trump awake at night. I think that it's all in the Mueller report, so that a litany of Russian attempts to influence people and on social media accounts like Twitter, etc. During that election. And so I think that they built a false case. That's what I think, just looking at it, and I stand to have my mind changed, but that's how it looks to me.
Okay, well, we'll leave that one there. So there certainly is no doubt history between Obama and Trump. We know that. Let's carry on. Oh, yes. Let's carry on with the Epstein discussion, though, because a US judge has denied a Justice Department bid to unseal grand jury transcripts related to the convicted sex offender. It's the first ruling in a series of attempts by Donald Trump's administration to get more information released. The House of Representatives Speaker Mike Johnson announced an early recess of the chamber. And of course, opponents are saying that's a stalling tactic to delay votes on the matter until September. In a press conference, Mike Johnson was asked if the president told him to bring the recess forward to delay the vote. Here was his response.
No, but I as you all know, I speak to the president multiple times a day on a typical day. And what I know about the president's heart on this is that he agrees with everything I've said here today. He wants maximum transparency, but he's also very insistent that we do not subject people who have already been victims of unspeakable crimes to further public scrutiny. And it would be a very dangerous thing to put those people's names out or to do a release of information in a way that is haphazard where they could be easily unmasked.
What's your thinking, David? Are there signs that this is really Donald Trump trying to delay the release of information?
I think Mike Johnson knows which side of his bread is buttered on, and he's read the runes. If he hasn't as he's take him at his word, he hasn't had a directive from Trump to put the House into recess, because what was happening earlier this week was that several Republican representatives were making noises that suggested they would line up with Democrats to force a vote and to join a vote that would, because the majority is so slim, it would end up forcing legally the White House to produce documents, as he says, with names in it, who were linked with Epstein. And so it's true that Johnson has decided that this would be a mess and has called time on it effectively by sending them all home for the summer. I just don't think it's going to go away. Trump is trying, I think, a lot of different ways to move on from this, or to diminish the whatever remains to be learned about Epstein.
Despite his core voters, his core supporters wanting more answers.
Yeah, and Mike Johnson has used up some real political capital here, because he's actually quite popular with the Trump base. He's done a lot of very loyal things to help Trump out, not least getting his big, beautiful bill through the House, which was pretty difficult. And so he's done Trump a favor, I would say, whether it was demanded or not. But it remains to be seen whether the Epstein will go away, because there's too many hairs are running. There's too many plates spinning at the moment to make it go away. Not least, that they're going to interview Ghislaine Maxwell in prison, and then, as you say, one judge has said that they can't release grand jury testimony that could be very intriguing. But that's not to say it won't be appealed, and that will eventually emerge. So there's a lot left to go on this one.
All right. Well, David Charter, thank you very much for joining us from Washington.